Welcome to Cults and Secret Societies. I'm your host, Ben Carter. In the heart of the Guyanese jungle, miles away from civilization, a group of people huddled together in what seemed like an idyllic community. They were members of the People's Temple, a religious cult led by the charismatic and manipulative Jim Jones. Their remote settlement, known as Jonestown, was proclaimed as a socialist paradise. However, a paradise it was not. Behind Jonestown's facade of equality and harmony, there were horrifying secrets. It was in this remote corner of the world, far removed from the prying eyes of society, that Jim Jones held absolute power. He controlled every aspect of his followers' lives. He dictated what they ate, when they slept, and how they worked. His word was law. Deceptively, Jones presented himself as a champion of social justice, attracting hundreds of followers with his promises of racial equality and communal living. His followers, many of them disenchanted with the racial tensions and economic inequality in America, saw in Jonestown the promise of a better life. However, beneath the surface of this idealistic community, there were whispers of physical and psychological abuse. Members were punished severely for disobedience. Forced labor, public humiliation, and physical violence were just some of the disciplinary measures Jones used to maintain his control. Moreover, Jones had a masterful ability to manipulate his followers, using fear as a potent tool. He staged fake attacks on the community to keep his followers in a constant state of paranoia and dependence. He convinced them that the outside world was hostile and that they were under constant threat. Jones's absolute control over his followers culminated in the chilling event known today as the Jonestown Massacre. On November 18th, 1978, over 900 members of the People's Temple were coerced into drinking a cyanide-laced fruit punch, a moment forever etched in history as the largest mass suicide event in modern times. But how did Jones gain such control over his followers? How did he inspire such loyalty that they were willing to die for him? And what were the circumstances that led to this horrifying event? The answers to these questions lie in the intricate web of manipulation, control, and fear that Jones weaved around his followers. As we delve deeper into this chilling story, we will uncover the secrets of Jonestown and the dark legacy of Jim Jones. The origins of the People's Temple, the religious group led by Jim Jones, can be traced back to 1955 in Indianapolis, Indiana. Jones, a charismatic and articulate preacher, founded the group with a vision of creating a utopian society that championed racial equality, social justice, and communal living. It was a vision that resonated with many, particularly during a time when America was grappling with deep-seated racial tensions and growing economic disparity. Jones was deeply influenced by the socialist ideologies of the time, and he sought to create a society that was free from the racial and economic inequalities that plagued mainstream America. His teachings were rooted in the Christian tradition, but they also incorporated elements of socialist thought, which appealed to his followers who were disillusioned with the social and political conditions of the time. In the early years, the People's Temple was seen as a beacon of hope. It was a place where people of all races, backgrounds, and socioeconomic statuses could come together and live as equals. Jones was lauded for his efforts in promoting racial integration and social justice, and his following grew. However, the temple was not without its controversies. Jones's methods were often authoritarian, and he was known to use fear and manipulation to control his followers. His sermons were filled with apocalyptic warnings and paranoia about the outside world, fostering a culture of fear and dependence within the community. In the late 60s, amidst growing scrutiny and allegations of abuse, Jones moved his congregation from Indiana to Northern California. He established a new base in Redwood Valley, and later in San Francisco and Los Angeles. But Jones's vision for a utopian society was yet to be fully realized. In the mid-70s, Jones began planning for a migration to Guyana, a small country on the northeastern coast of South America. He was drawn to Guyana for its socialist government and its isolation from the American authorities. Jones leased a piece of land from the Guyanese government and began constructing what he called the Promised Land, a remote jungle settlement that would later become known as Jonestown. In Jonestown, Jones hoped to create the utopian society he had long dreamed of, away from the prying eyes of American authorities and the media. But as we will discover, the reality of Jonestown was far from the utopia that Jones had promised. It was a place where fear, control, and manipulation reigned supreme, leading ultimately to the tragic events of November 18th, 1978. In understanding the tragic events of Jonestown, it's important to delve into the key figures who played pivotal roles in the creation and management of the People's Temple and its ultimate catastrophe. James Warren Jones, or Jim Jones as he was commonly known, was the charismatic leader of the People's Temple. Born on May 13, 1931 in rural Indiana, Jones was a student of religion from a young age. He was drawn to the idea of creating a racially integrated congregation that promoted social equality and justice, an idea shared by his wife, Marceline Baldwin Jones. Marceline, a nurse by profession, was deeply involved in the operations of the People's Temple. She served as a calming influence to Jones's fiery sermons and was often seen as a mother figure to the congregants. Yet she also played a crucial role in the enforcement of Jones's doctrines, adding credibility to his teachings. The doctrine of the People's Temple was a fusion of Christian teachings, socialist principles, and the charismatic authority of Jones himself. Jones preached about the imminent apocalypse, the evils of capitalism, and the promise of a utopian society where all would live as equals. His charisma and the promise of a better world attracted many individuals disillusioned with mainstream society. Members of the People's Temple were encouraged, and in many cases coerced, to live communally and share their resources. They were told that by doing so they were building the foundation of a new society, free from the social ills that plagued the rest of the world. These teachings were shared through passionate sermons, communal gatherings, and printed newsletters. However, Jones's ideology was not just shared, it was enforced. Members were expected to demonstrate their loyalty to the cause, often through financial contributions or labor. Dissent was not tolerated, and those who questioned Jones's teachings were punished or publicly humiliated. Yet Jones was careful to conceal these harsh realities from outsiders, presenting the People's Temple as a harmonious, progressive community. In the coming segments, we'll delve deeper into the life inside Jonestown, the manipulation tactics used by Jones, the warning signs that were ignored, and the alarm bells that were silenced. We will also explore the role of the American and Guyanese governments, the media, and the defectors who tried to expose the truth about Jonestown before it was too late. As we move deeper into the shadows of the People's Temple, we encounter a web of theories that attempt to explain the hidden agendas and covert activities of the group. One of the most prominent of these theories suggests that Jim Jones and his followers were not just a religious group, but a political tool used by higher powers. This theory proposes that the People's Temple was a social experiment orchestrated by the American government. The group's socialist principles, its emphasis on communal living, and its move to Guyana are all seen as part of a larger plan to test the viability of such a society. Some even suggest that Jones was a government agent, chosen for his charisma and manipulative powers to control the experiment's subjects. Another theory, albeit more sinister, suggests that the People's Temple was a front for a mind control operation, an offshoot of the CIA's infamous MK-Ultra program. Proponents of this theory point to Jones's use of fear, isolation, and drugs to manipulate and control his followers. They argue that the mass suicide was not a religious act, but a test of the ultimate level of control, the power to command death. Many also believe that the group was involved in illegal activities, such as drug trafficking and money laundering. They point to the vast sums of money that the People's Temple seemed to have at its disposal, despite the fact that most of its followers were of modest means. This theory also suggests that the group's move to Guyana was an attempt to evade the reach of American law enforcement agencies. Finally, there is the theory that the mass suicide was not a suicide at all, but a mass murder orchestrated by Jones and his inner circle. This theory suggests that the followers were forced to drink the poison, and those who resisted were killed. The audio recording of the final hours, known as the death tape, is often cited as evidence, with proponents pointing to the sounds of dissent and the chilling order by Jones to get the children and the seniors first. These theories, though speculative and unproven, reveal a deep mistrust and suspicion towards the People's Temple and its leader. They paint a picture of a group that was not just misguided, but malevolent, and of a leader who was not just charismatic, but monstrous. Whether these theories hold any truth, they underscore the sense of mystery and intrigue that surrounds the People's Temple to this day. And as we continue our journey, we will attempt to unravel these mysteries and uncover the truth behind the tragedy of Jonestown. Going deeper into the eerie labyrinth of the People's Temple, we encounter a plethora of signs, symbols, and codes that were integral to the group's identity and operations. These were not merely decorative or ornamental. They played a crucial role in shaping the group's ideology and maintaining Jones's control over his followers. One of the most significant symbols was the People's Temple logo, featuring a black hand interlocked with a white one, encircled by a gray ring. The logo was a clear representation of Jones's purported vision of racial integration and equality, a vision that was compelling enough to attract many of his followers. But some suggest that the symbol had a darker, more insidious meaning, that it represented the inescapable grasp of the temple, from which no one could break free. Hand signs were another crucial part of the temple's secret language. One particular gesture stands out: the Q sign, formed by making a circle with the thumb and index finger, with the other three fingers spread out. This sign was used by Jones and his inner circle to silently communicate their allegiance and commitment to the cause, or to signal that a particular action or directive was to be carried out. The use of coded language was also widespread within the group. Jones often used biblical references and religious metaphors to convey his messages, effectively blurring the line between spiritual guidance and manipulation. For instance, he would often speak of drinking the wine, a phrase that ostensibly referred to partaking in the Holy Sacrament, but was later revealed to be a sinister foreshadowing of the mass suicide. In addition to these, the People's Temple also practiced a number of rituals, many of which were designed to reinforce Jones's authority and control. One such ritual was the catharsis sessions, where members were publicly shamed and humiliated for their perceived shortcomings, only to be forgiven by Jones, reinforcing his position as the group's absolute leader. These symbols, codes, and rituals were not just tools of communication. They were instruments of power and control. They fostered a sense of exclusive knowledge and belonging among the followers, while simultaneously isolating them from the outside world. They concealed the true nature of the group's activities under a layer of religious symbolism, making it difficult for outsiders to understand what was really happening within the walls of the People's Temple. In the next part of our journey, we will dig deeper into these symbols and their significance, and explore how they were used to manipulate and control the followers of the People's Temple. As the People's Temple grew in number and influence, a few brave individuals began to question the cult's true motives, sparking attempts to expose the group's activities. However, these attempts were met with deflection, disinformation, and even threats, often with dire consequences. One of the first to challenge the temple was Lester Kinsolving, a journalist who had noted the temple's rapid rise in the San Francisco Bay Area. In 1972, he wrote a series of articles questioning the group's practices and finances. However, the temple responded swiftly and aggressively. They launched a smear campaign against Kinsolving, accusing him of prejudice and religious intolerance. Kinsolving was bombarded with hate mail and threats, forcing him to abandon his investigation. A few years later, Congressman Leo Ryan took up the mantle. In 1978, deeply disturbed by reports from defectors and concerned relatives, he decided to visit the Jonestown compound in Guyana. His intention was to investigate allegations of human rights abuses within the cult. Jones, however, had other plans. Upon the congressman's arrival, Jones orchestrated a grand show of contentment and prosperity. The residents of Jonestown, many of whom were brainwashed or too frightened to speak the truth, played along. Ryan's visit would have ended as a successful propaganda exercise for the temple, had it not been for a few desperate members who slipped the congressman notes pleading for help to escape. As Ryan and his delegation prepared to leave Jonestown with a handful of defectors, they were ambushed by temple gunmen at the airstrip. Ryan and 4 others were tragically killed in the attack. This massacre, referred to as the Jonestown airstrip killings, was the precursor to the mass suicide that would occur later that same day. Despite the risks and challenges, the voices of dissent never completely died down. Some ex-members, such as Deborah Layton and Terry Buford, managed to escape the clutches of the temple and lived to tell their tales. Their chilling accounts of life under Jones's rule confirm the insidious manipulation, control, and terror that characterized the temple. These attempts to expose the People's Temple were not only met with ruthless retaliation, but were also largely ignored or dismissed by the wider society until it was too late. The tragic events at Jonestown served as a grim reminder of the dangers of unchecked power, manipulation, and the urgent need for vigilance in the face of charismatic leaders who exploit faith for their own nefarious purposes. Peeling back the layers of the People's Temple's outward facade of racial harmony and social justice, we can delve into the more esoteric, spiritual, and metaphysical beliefs that underpinned the movement. Jim Jones's teachings were an amalgamation of ideas, borrowing heavily from socialist ideology, Christianity, and New Age spirituality. He often claimed to be the reincarnation of various religious figures such as Jesus Christ, Buddha, and Lenin, positioning himself as a divine authority to his followers. Central to the temple's doctrine was the concept of translation. Jones preached that he and his followers would die together, only to be reborn on another planet, living in a socialist paradise. This blend of religious, spiritual, and political ideologies allowed Jones to exercise profound control over his followers, who believed that he was the only one who could lead them to this promised utopia. Jones also held strong beliefs about the nature of humanity. He preached that all humans were inherently divine, but that this divinity was corrupted by capitalist society. He argued that through his teachings, individuals could tap into their divine nature and live out their truest, most authentic selves. However, this was not a journey one could undertake alone. Only through communal living and strict adherence to the temple's tenets could one hope to achieve this spiritual awakening. Regarding the cosmos, Jones held a dualistic worldview, dividing the universe into forces of good and evil. He believed that he and his followers were the champions of good, battling against the malevolent forces of capitalism and racism. Jones often claimed to have prophetic visions of an impending nuclear apocalypse, further instilling fear and dependency in his followers. He portrayed the Jonestown compound as the only sanctuary where they could escape this catastrophic fate. While these beliefs may seem outlandish to many, it's important to remember the context in which they were preached. Jones's followers were often individuals disillusioned by society, seeking solace, meaning, and a sense of belonging. The temple offered not just a community, but also a vision of a better world. Jones's promises of spiritual enlightenment and social utopia were irresistible to many, drawing them deeper into the web of manipulation and control that he masterfully spun. However, as we would come to learn, these lofty ideals were a far cry from the grim reality of life in Jonestown. The utopia Jones promised was, in fact, a dystopia marked by fear, abuse, and ultimately, tragedy. The spiritual and metaphysical beliefs that once offered hope would eventually lead to one of the most chilling episodes in modern history. The tragic events of Jonestown have left an indelible mark on modern culture and power structures, with implications reaching far beyond the boundaries of the jungle compound. The influence of the People's Temple and the strategies employed by Jim Jones can be seen in various facets of society, from media and politics to religion and education. In the realm of media, the Jonestown Massacre became a stark warning of the dangers of charismatic leadership and blind obedience. The chilling audio tapes of Jones's final speech, accompanied by the sounds of his followers dying, have been replayed countless times, serving as a grim reminder of the potential consequences of unchecked power. This tragic event has been the subject of numerous documentaries, films, and books, often used as a cautionary tale to highlight the hazards of cult psychology. In the political sphere, the Jonestown incident led to a re-evaluation of the role of government in regulating religious organizations. The U.S. and other nations grappled with the delicate balance between protecting religious freedom and ensuring the safety and well-being of citizens. The People's Temple, after all, started as a religious organization that promoted social justice, but it evolved into a totalitarian regime under Jones's control. While no specific legislation may have resulted directly from the Jonestown tragedy, it undoubtedly influenced discussions around the oversight of religious and communal organizations. In religious circles, the Jonestown Massacre sparked debate about the nature of faith and the role of leadership. Many religious leaders and scholars began to question how a spiritual movement could be so drastically perverted, leading to such a horrifying end. The incident served as a wake-up call for many religious communities, prompting them to reevaluate their practices and safeguards against potential manipulation and abuse. In the field of education, the Jonestown event has been incorporated into psychology and sociology courses as a case study on groupthink, conformity, and the power of charismatic leadership. It provides a stark example of how societal pressures can drive individuals to abandon critical thinking and become susceptible to manipulation. While the physical presence of Jonestown may be long gone, its legacy continues to permeate multiple facets of our societal structure. The tragedy serves as a constant reminder of the potential dangers lurking beneath charismatic leadership, ideological extremism, and blind obedience. The lessons from Jonestown, while painful, provide a crucial lens through which to view and analyze modern power structures and societal dynamics. The hope is that by understanding and remembering the tragedy of Jonestown, we can prevent similar occurrences in the future. As we delve deeper into the shadows of the Jonestown narrative, the line between fact and speculation becomes increasingly blurred. Some theories, shrouded in controversy and mystery, venture into the realm of the paranormal, the occult, and even extraterrestrial. These theories, although not universally accepted, provide an alternative perspective, a different lens through which to view the events that unfolded in the Guyanese jungle. One such theory suggests that Jim Jones was not just a charismatic leader, but a master of mind control techniques. It is speculated that Jones used methods of psychological manipulation, hypnosis, and even possibly drugs to subdue the will of his followers. This theory argues that the mass suicide was not an act of free will, as Jones claimed, but the result of systematic brainwashing and coercion. Another theory delves into the realm of the occult. Some suggest that Jones was involved in dark rituals and practices, which he used to exert his control over his followers. While there is no concrete proof to support this claim, some survivors have attested to witnessing strange, unexplained phenomena within the confines of the Jonestown compound. They describe eerie occurrences, like apparitions and inexplicable sounds. These accounts, however, remain subjective and have not been substantiated with empirical evidence. Perhaps one of the most outlandish theories is that the tragedy of Jonestown was orchestrated by extraterrestrial entities. This theory surmises that Jones was in contact with alien beings, who influenced his actions and manipulated the events leading to the mass suicide. The proponents of this theory point to Jones's reported fascination with the concept of extraterrestrial life and some of his unorthodox teachings that seem to hint at communication with otherworldly entities. However, no tangible proof has been found to substantiate these claims. Lastly, some speculate that the entire event was a psychological experiment gone wrong, a sinister project orchestrated by shadowy government entities interested in the effects of mass manipulation and mind control. This theory suggests that Jones was either a knowing participant or an unwitting pawn in a larger, more nefarious plot. While these theories might seem extreme, it's important to remember that they emerge from genuine attempts to make sense of an event that defies comprehension. Each theory, no matter how outlandish, reflects a deep-set need to understand the unimaginable, to find reason within chaos. While they may not replace the established narrative, these alternative perspectives offer a glimpse into the darker, more speculative corners of the human imagination. As we draw the curtain on this exploration into the secrets of the Jim Jones compound, we find ourselves left with more questions than answers. The tragedy that unfolded in Jonestown is shrouded in shadows and secrets, some of which may never see the light of day. And although we've tried to dissect and understand the various theories and viewpoints that surround this case, we must acknowledge that there is still a vast ocean of unknowns. Several aspects of the Jonestown tragedy continue to perplex researchers and conspiracy theorists alike. For instance, why were so many of Jones's followers willing or seemingly willing to follow him into death? While the theories of brainwashing and coercion have been proposed, they do not fully explain the scale of the incident. What could have possibly been the psychological underpinnings that led to such a mass surrender of life? And then, there are the unexplained phenomena. The eerie occurrences reported by some survivors, the apparitions and uncanny sounds. Are they merely hallucinations born out of fear and trauma, or do they indicate something more sinister at play? The theory that Jones was in contact with extraterrestrial entities, although far-fetched, raises its own questions. If there was indeed communication with otherworldly beings, what could have been their purpose or agenda? Is there a hidden connection between the tragedy of Jonestown and the vast uncharted universe that lies beyond our earthly perception? The speculated involvement of shadowy government entities in the Jonestown Massacre is another area that remains shrouded in mystery. Could it have been a psychological experiment that spiraled out of control? And if so, who were the puppet masters pulling the strings, and to what end? In the end, the secrets of the Jim Jones compound remain as elusive as ever. The theories we've delved into are but fragments of a larger, more complex puzzle, each piece adding a new layer of mystery to an already confounding narrative. Perhaps some secrets are destined to remain hidden, buried deep within the heart of the jungle. As we conclude this journey, we leave you with a sense of the profound complexity, the chilling mysteries, and the lingering questions that surround the Jonestown tragedy. We are reminded of the human capacity for belief, for manipulation, and, tragically, for self-destruction. The echoes of Jonestown continue to reverberate, a chilling reminder of the darker side of human nature, a testament to the lengths people can go under the influence of a charismatic leader, and a stark warning for the future. In the end, perhaps the most haunting question is not just what happened in Jonestown, but could it happen again? A question that we must carry with us as we continue to explore the mysteries of our world and the depths of the human psyche. Thanks for listening. This has been Cults and Secret Societies. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now.